Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. There's a point that most business owners hit where things don't quite add up. You've got good people, you've got a plan, and on paper, everything looks like it should be working. But your decisions, they feel slow, your execution's drifting, and you start to wonder what's actually going on underneath it. And sometimes the answer isn't the strategy, and it's not the people, or at least individually, it's what's happening between them. This is the Business Behind Your Business podcast. And look, we're really focusing on helping you drive better results inside your business. And today we're going to be talking about the people inside your business, because people are critical, and how they work together, because that's often where things either start moving forward or getting stuck or just falling apart. And we don't want them to fall apart. So look, today joining me is Dr. André Martin. He spent a big part of his career inside some organizations like Google, Nike, Mars, Target, working closely with leadership teams on how they actually perform when it matters. But the interesting pattern he's seen in this is that most teams don't struggle because the strategy is wrong. They struggle because they're not aligned. And they're not operating at their best, and they don't have that shared belief that they can actually make something happen together. Now, he's brought that thinking together in his book, Collective Confidence, which really challenges how most of us are going to think about performance inside our business. So, Andre, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me today. It's good to be here.
I'm really thrilled to have you here. And I'm looking forward to this because you've got a lot of, and look, people are going to look at your background and the organizations you work with, and they go, they are high-performing cultures. They are high-performing businesses. But, when we're looking at the outside, that's what the perception we're getting. There's probably been a lot of, any big organization is going to have some culture, performance issues, people issues. And small, medium business owners, and they're not any different. We've all got people issues. It's one of the biggest things I hear. Not when I talk to people about accounting issues or how their business is going. Often it's people. People are one of the biggest things I hear about. So, you've got some inspirational stories to tell us. It's all in. You put the book together, but we're just going to sort of scrape the surface, I think, today and look at some of the things we've got. So, where do we get started? There's a lot to cover here in your book. But one of the things that you've said, and I've seen you, this has come out in quite a lot of the content that you've produced and shared with people, is that inspiration outperforms engagement. And you've said that we've probably been investing in the wrong one. That's a pretty deep one to jump into to start with. But is that somewhere where we should get started looking at the wrong part?
Yeah. Hey, Paul, I think it's a great place to start because, I think a lot about small business owners. I work with them a great deal in a lot of my operating roles. And the thing that always is on their mind, whether they voice it or not, is that they wonder if they're getting all the discretionary effort that they should get. Right. And the truth is, in this day and age, when we're working on computer screens and virtually, there's a 50-50 chance your employees turning off their video and going to play with their dog, hang out and do chores at the house, or maybe even, go to a second job. And so I think this idea of how do you ensure that you're getting as much of their energy as we can to come into your company? And that's where really inspiration plays a big part. The science around engagement is simple. It says, hey, if your employees have a strong emotional connection to your company, they'll likely perform better. And I buy that, right? But engagement is an outcome. Right? You have to do things to get people to emotionally care, connect, and commit to your company. And that's where collective confidence, inspiration, and belief comes in. So this idea of inspiration it's science. It's cause and effect. If you go out in the world and you get inspired by something, you actually transfer that energy. And the cool thing about humans is that they have to take that energy and put it into new, better, different, or more meaningful solutions. And so the thing I like about inspiration is that it's in action. If you can get a group more inspired, you're absolutely going to get better solutions and more output from them.
That just leads into possible so many different questions we can ask here. But a lot of time, I think people are looking, well, how do I get my team more engaged? But you're talking about inspiration.
Yeah.
A lot of the programs or a lot of the steps that I've seen business owners do is really putting lip service to that. It's sort of like, okay, we need more engagement, so we need to say to staff, we need to be doing, this fun thing, or we need you to be here, or here's the company motto, or let's give you some free gear to make you feel more like you belong. But I think that's missing the mark.
It is missing the mark. I think what really inspires people in this day and age are a few things. One is story momentum matter, right? In this age of uncertainty and disruption that we're living in, the thing I see from executives all the way down to frontline workers is everybody's unsure if what they're doing is adding up to anything meaningful. And so stories of momentum, small ways that individuals or teams are making the business better, man, that just tells us it's possible. The second place that I go in this area of inspiration is to think about borrowed brilliance, right? This idea of exposing your team to other teams outside of your business that are just a further along on their journey and they've been a success. That tells us that the thing we're trying to do is possible. And the third thing that I get, really sort of bullish about is be really clear about why the world's better for your company in it. Not company motto, but like, how are you impacting the world in a positive way, and connect people to those consumers that are being impacted in a positive way. You do those three things as a leader, I mean, energy just sort of starts, exponentially increasing in your company.
Some big things there, or some little things there, because you talk about momentum. And one of the things I try to do with my team on a regular basis, or pretty much on a daily basis, is say, what's something that was a win for us yesterday, or a win for you yesterday? What went well? What did we do well? What are you proud of that we did yesterday? And I find it interesting because a lot of people aren't thinking about, well, hang on, what went well yesterday that's contributing to how we can do a better job today, or how we delivered something great to a client. We're all thinking about, what do we need to fix? Why is it so hard for people to change that approach?
Well, because I think we as small business owners, and even leaders in large companies, part of what gets us to that point is that we're really critical. We're critical of ourselves. We're critical of our strategy. We're critical of the people that work for us. And that's good because it's in the service of being better, right? We critique in order to be better. But I think the thing that's missing in that equation is that if you don't look back and honor the things we've done well, man, everybody's walking in on Monday morning worried they're just going to fail. And so I think that idea of like, hey, leverage the stuff that we've done already as a springboard for doing the harder things, taking the bigger leap, doing the more courageous act, and then give people feedback to help them get better along that path. But man, it all starts with, did I do a good job for you so far? And if I really feel that, I'm more apt to walk in and try to do a better job tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, as a business owner, as a leader, that you mentioned that we're used to fixing things and trying to, being critical of ourselves. Do you think that we get so focused on what's the next fire that we've got to put out, next action that we've got to solve, that we forget to actually take that time and look at, well, hey, we actually did a great job here, or Ange did a great job here, because she's done that great job, we can now go and do this, and that just makes everything so much better. But we seem to be thinking, okay, we've done that, let's move on quickly, we've got the next fire to put out.
Yeah.
Quick word from me. 30 years as an accountant has taught me that business owners, they don't fail from a lack of effort, but they fail from a lack of planning. And that's not a discipline problem, it's a design problem. I've built my own method to fix this, and it's the same one I use with clients all the time. The good news is that you can now get access to it at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com/focus.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, a large part of the book, it really comes down to this idea of like belief is the front end of long-term sustainable success. Like if you can build a belief that we have the capability to be great, and you can bake that into the things that have already happened to us, then you know what? I'm going to put more effort in. And if I put more effort in, chances are we're going to get better results. And if I get better results, I believe more. And then you're just creating this self-reinforcing wheel of performance. And so I think that idea, I was just with a leadership team last week, and we did this visual timeline of it was literally the last 7 months. And they put everything on the board, and 90% of what they put up happened in the last 3 weeks. And so I pushed them. I said, hey, let's push back. It's only been 6 months. And then they started filling the board, and they were shocked at how far they'd come, how much they'd accomplished, how many challenges they'd actually been through. And that exercise alone, they just walked out of that hour going, oh my God, look at what we've already done. What's ahead is going to be easy. And that's where you want your team to be every day.
So that's 7 months. And you mentioned quite rightly the 3-week period. I sort of remember going back and brings up some bad feelings about how you'd go in for a performance review as an employee, and everything they talked about was what happened in the last 2 weeks, even though it was a 6-month or 12-month review. So 7 months, how regularly should we be looking at this? Should we be looking back? Because 6 months is a long time. As you mentioned, a lot happens in 6 months. What would be an ideal time frame to be revisiting how you've actually progressed?
Yeah, Paul, I think there's a couple ways I would handle it. Is if the team has a big success on a project, they literally just blow it out of the water. I think when you have those moments of really great success, or opposite, really, really significant hardship, you should stop and you should take some real time to sort of process through that. Not like, what did we do wrong, but really just like, what happened? What were the highs? What were the lows? If we could go back and do it again, what would we do differently? And more importantly is like, what did we learn? I grew up in the Center for Creative Leadership, which is a big executive development firm, and their whole sort of design of development is based on a single piece of research called lessons of experience. What they found is they took 2 groups of leaders, all of them high potential. One group of leaders succeeded, and then fell off the cliff. The other group of leaders kept going. They had no sort of limit to their career. You know what the difference was in the latter group? It wasn't skills. It wasn't personality traits. It was the fact that this group took key events that we all have, hardships, turnaround, building a new team, breaking down a team, doing layoffs, setting a new strategy. And they took those key events and they turned them into lessons of experience. The truth is that most of us don't really learn a whole lot that changes how we behave. We're actually just repeating the same experience again and again and again. The exceptional leaders, every time they have a significant moment, they are rethinking the habits they bring to leadership. And that's probably the most important lesson learned. You just can't do it often enough.
Yeah. So learning from those habits and those conversations and even just celebrating, because I think, what we did really well, hey, let's keep doing that. What did we do that was different? Well, we stopped doing those negative things, maybe, or we stopped making these mistakes, but we actually went and did this, and just building that up. And you see that a lot is that, or my observation when I'm talking to business owners is that the employees that have continued to be with them and outperform and grow as an employee and grow in their contribution, there's been that something different about them. But I'm actually looking at, it's how the leadership has actually developed that employee relationship and what have they been focusing on. A lot of the time, when an employee fails, we tend to think, we didn't hire correctly, or we just needed to hire better. That doesn't seem to be it, because there's one constant I see here is that it doesn't matter who you hire, you're the person that's hiring and doing the leading. So is that where the issue lies in most cases?
Yeah, in most cases is we try to make culture really complicated, Paul. Like it's a big, gnarly, sort of undefined word. And I come from a, really simple small town. And so my definition for culture is it's simply the average of our collective behaviors. How we all choose to behave will become our culture. And so if you think about it, where does that start? It starts with the smallest leadership team that a company has. So a founder, his partner, and the 2 folks that have been there the longest, how they choose to behave, what happens? If they work a certain way, everyone below them starts working that way. And so in some ways, it basically comes down to, what are you modeling? How do you behave? is that going to produce better results? Because in about 6 months' time, everyone's going to work the way that you work. And I don't think we sort of honor that enough as we think about being small business owners. We sort of think my job is to be tough, to be hard, to drive really. And it's like, maybe. But you know what? You also got to realize that every eye is on you. Everybody's watching you. And the way that you show up every day, every Monday morning, every Friday night when you leave, man, that's just setting the bar. And so if we thought we are culture, how we behave will become the culture we have, I think we might change the way we do things.
I always looked at it that one of our biggest mistakes in hiring is we try and hire people much the same as us and then expect something different from them. But that whole idea of you create that culture, you create the work, and people look at you and say, well, hang on, that's how you get rewarded for being in here. And then you grind that person down because it's not who they are. I want to look at it. I've heard a few concepts here, and I'm quite keen on it, is that when you're hiring, you should be hiring somebody with better skills, better experience, that you shouldn't have to be teaching. You've coined this phrase called borrowed brilliance. How does that, well, firstly, what do you mean by borrowed brilliance, and how does that fit into this whole idea of culture and hiring?
Yeah. So, I mean, borrowed brilliance is really a concept that says, there are people out there that if you expose your team to, they will raise the bar because they've essentially done what you've already done. Borrowed brilliance, many of the reasons why we bring in external talent is because we're looking for capability that we don't have. And so you can either have borrowed brilliance come in through your hiring pipeline, you can just expose people to other teams. But I think when I think about this hiring question, one of the things that stands in our way of doing it well is that it's just basically a giant dating app, right? When you think about it, Paul, if you're interviewing me for a job, I'm going to show up with a fresh haircut, a perfect resume. I'm going to have studied all the questions I think you're going to answer, and I'm going to have the perfect answer for every one of them. You're not really seeing me. You're seeing this sort of manufactured version of me. Same is true on your side. You're going to show up, the epitome of what you want the company to represent. But that's not you on an average Tuesday. And so one of the things in my first book, it was called Wrong Fit, Right Fit, I wrote about was this idea that hey, maybe we should change the job description itself. Maybe what we should do is instead of having a big job description with 30 bullets on it, right? Everything that the job could be, maybe we should write it like this. Hey, here's the way that we get work done here. Here's the way we solve problems, socialize ideas. Here's the way you're going to get developed. Here's the way we manage performance. Here's our relationship with time. You're going to come in at this hour. You're going to leave at this hour. If this is your brand of crazy, give us a call back. And then after that, it's here's the 4 capabilities we don't have in this company. If you have one of them, let's have another interview. And last but not least, I think this is really important, is when we hire someone for a job, we should just say, hey, here's the actual 3 projects you're going to be doing. Not your big list of your, job title, but here's the 3 projects. Do these light you up? Are they in your wheelhouse? Is one of these something you want to learn more about? I think if we hired on that hierarchy, I think we get people that not only fit our organization, but they're ready to do the very specific piece of work we need.
You mentioned about bringing in external consultants, and earlier in our conversation, you mentioned about looking outside at somebody that step ahead. What are some practical ways that smaller businesses can do this? Because, looking at the resourcing for a lot of small, medium businesses, they don't necessarily have the funds to go and do it. What are some practical ways that they can tap into this borrowed brilliance?
Yeah, when I do talent reviews for a small business or help them think about, hey, how are you going to grow this business? You got to think about this, buy, borrow, or bot strategy, right? Sometimes the only thing we think about is I need to hire a headcount. I have this gap. I need to hire someone. I'm like, you can, but you end up paying so much money for it. Benefits and salary and bonuses and all that. Maybe you should just borrow it, which is hire a contractor. Hire somebody for 3 months. You'd be amazed at what good people with a very narrowed skill set can get done in your company in 3 months. Or, hire them for 6 months. But it also allows you to get to know them without having to have the overhead of hiring someone in full time. You can also hire in external consultants or advisors, like just someone who can help you think differently about the problem. Sometimes all you need is an hour of someone who's done it before. And they can give you the 3 strategies and you can go get that done on your own. And then last is like the bot idea is just like, are you sure your process is effective enough? Are you sure you've designed everybody in jobs that actually, leave this gap and need this thing to be done? Do you have a process that could just take care of this? And then you don't have to hire anybody. But I think our knee-jerk reaction is we only have one option, and that's to hire another person. And it's like, I just think that should be the last option you should take, especially in a small business, because every time you hire, it just takes you 2 or 3 years to get that money back.
Yeah, and a lot of small, medium businesses, particularly in that growth phase, you can't afford that 2 to 3 year time period. Your cash flow, your runway, you need to hit the ground running. I guess one of the questions I've also got is like, you mentioned those practical steps. If we were to go back, I think one of the questions might be that we need to ask, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what do we actually need here? Because I think sometimes we jump to what we think the answer is. How do we actually step back and realistically say, what do we actually need in our organization?
Yeah, Paul, I mean, one of the things that you can do really quickly is say, hey, what's our strategy for the next half a year? And what capability, right, do we not have here that would make that a lot easier to do? And I think, for me, it's just anytime you have someone leave the company, anytime in a small business, let's say you're a business of 20 people, one of them leaves, that's like 5% of your workforce. Like, you should sit back and go like, wow, we have this, sort of pot of money. How should we spend it? Sometimes you're not going to spend it on another person. Sometimes you'll shore up the people you have. Sometimes you'll buy a new computer system. Sometimes you'll reinvest that into R&D or in, making the store cleaner or better. And I just think like anytime someone leaves, it's a really good chance to sit back, open your eyes really wide, take a deep breath and say, I have this X amount of money now. What's the best thing I could do with it? Right? As opposed to just our knee-jerk reactions to hire a backfill for that same role.
I'm starting to feel very validated here, Andre, and I'm thinking I should be paying you for this consultation, because it's something that we did in our accounting business here. Is we looked at, well, we've got some real capacity issues here, and the traditional way of approaching it in an accounting firm is to think, okay, we need to hire another full-time person, but what do we actually need them to do? And what we identified, and I actually got the whole team involved in this process, we stepped back and we said, well, what are the things that we need to be done that we don't have the skills for here that's really making it hard for us to do our job? And we actually came up with 6 different aspects. And we said, look, we're not going to find somebody that can do all of that. We hire one person, they're going to do 2 of those things and they're going to be very expensive. But how do we approach it? So we got a bit creative in terms of, well, what do we actually think of we need? We could use a contractor, like you mentioned. We could use somebody part-time. We could use a semi-retired. Maybe we could replace some of this with technology, like you mentioned. You get the bot to actually redesign our processes. But I think you've got to look at a different way of solving the same problem and move on from some of those traditional things that are holding us back.
I love that, Paul. One of the things that I always think about when I'm running a team is anytime I do either have extra budget or someone leaves and so I have a little gap, is just go around your team and ask, like, what's the thing that's standing most in your way of doing the best work of your life? Like, I come from a place where I believe everybody wants to be great. I really believe that. Often, we're holding them back. They're playing small because they don't have the right resources. They don't have the right connections. They don't have the right relationships. They don't have the right technology, whatever it is. And I just think like there's a really good moment, simple, just, small business, especially ask everybody, once a month, like what's standing in the way of doing the best work of your life? And you will learn the things that'll help you make better resourcing decisions downstream.
Yeah. Just on that, you sort of mentioned the word learning. And I think one of the other areas I'd love to hear your thoughts on is traditionally a lot of business owners don't invest in, particularly small business, they don't invest in resourcing, skilling, upskilling employees. What is a better approach to learning? Because a lot of times I've seen very reactive. Oh, we need somebody to do this. You've got to do this. But you've already touched on it by asking people what would be a great way to help them unlock an issue that's preventing them from doing their work. But what's also, when you're actually hiring, what gets you excited? So why do we not get this learning process right?
Well, I think because we're in a trap with it where we think, the only way that people like to learn is in a classroom. And so we have to pay money. I always tell all the small business I work with a lot of scale ups from $10 million to 50 to 100. And the thing I tell them is you have to think about what's the promise you can make. Small businesses, you can make two promises to people. One is that your job is going to get bigger and more difficult every single day you're in it, if we're growing. And secondly is you're in the best business school in the world. My daughter just took a job at a 40-person firm, probably about $60 million, still relatively small for a consumer goods firm. And she's doing everything. She's in constant contact with the CEO. She's asked to do projects that are outside of her core competence every single day. And I'm like, you're in the best classroom there is. In the end, Paul, the thing we got to start realizing is life's the best classroom on earth. If we as leaders set up moments where people can realize, see, and utilize all these things that they're learning how to do. And that's where we get it wrong, right? We don't take the time to reflect, show them how far they've grown. I tell my team, do this. If I was in a small business right now, I would have every one of my employees update their resume every 3 months. And I think they would find that it is just getting so stocked filled with experiences, they probably don't have room for them. But again, we don't do that. And so we forget all the things that we've done.
Mm-hmm. Is there a value in how would you actually, can you formalize that process so that you structure a time when employees come back and share, this is what I've been learning, this is what it helps me to do, here's what I think we also need to be doing, and I'd love to be able to teach you these skills that I've picked up from this project. Is that a value?
I think I'd be doing that instead of doing performance management. It's, right now our conversations are, hey, here's all the stuff I collected on you. Here's where I think you're good and I think you're bad. Most of it happened in the last 3 weeks because I don't remember anything else. And now I'm going to give you a score that's on a 1 to 5 grade, and it's going to determine how much bonus you're going to get. That's a dissatisfying conversation for everybody. Yeah, the better conversation would be, hey, on a monthly basis, every manager of every person should sit down and catalog what was learned. Catalog experiences gained, catalog projects completed. Talk about why it was harder than it should be. And in that, you start sort of building this sense of you're learning every single day on this job. That's the best part about being in small businesses. If you play your small business experience right, you can literally learn the entire ecosystem of a business from, sort of accounting all the way through to sales. But a lot of people sort of don't see it that way. And they get angry at their employee because they're not getting to go to the next conference or the next learning program, or they're not getting to, do the next thing that's super popular, when in fact you're getting more learning than 90% of the people out there. I told my daughter just last night, I'm like, if you spend 3 years here, you will have experiences that would take you 7 years in a big company. So yes, you're getting less pay. Yes, it's harder work. Yes, it's longer hours, but there's a big benefit in it.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. So I've got another question to come in from that, but I just want to share because it brings back memories. When I first started in accounting, I was working in a small firm. I think there were 5 of us. Yeah. And I was at a professional evening with somebody that I graduated from university with, and they were working with one of the big 4, big 6 accounting firms. And we were sharing what we were doing. And I was saying, I was going out to clients, I'm meeting them, I'm learning how to do forecasting and cash flows, I'm writing reports, I'm speaking to clients. And they say, we're photocopying and getting coffee. And I'm going, well, okay, you might be getting more money than me, but I'm learning so much more that I would never get from that bigger environment. And so there's that communication there. And you mentioned that learning from other people. Two things that have really changed the way that we're working today is we had the onset of working from home, which seems to be a lot more accommodating, and we've now got the onset of AI. Those two things, how are they having a positive or negative impact on the way that we create this culture of brilliance?
Hey, Paul, I think we still don't, jury's still out. Like I'll tell you that early indications of like working from home is there's some absolute positive benefits, right? So you're losing commute times, you're able to focus more on heads down work, you're able to sort of handle life, so a lot more people have harmony. I think the drawback is that we've also saw an explosion of loneliness, right? So 1 in 5 people in the workplace right now are lonely on a daily basis, right? And that's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? So this idea of like, yes, we are more productive. Yes, we probably have more harmony, but we are more disconnected and more lonely. And frankly, if you're younger right now, like starting off your work, a lot of what you pick up is in the process of being in proximity to each other. And so I think we're finding that incoming generation of workers aren't getting the mentorship that a lot of us would have growing up because we're just not in proximity, and all our time is so accounted for. There's no sort of space in it. So I think that's sort of the work from home piece. My advice to anybody is like working, like whether you're remote or in office, it's sort of the last question you answer. You got to decide like, what kind of leader are you? What does your industry demand in terms of the way that work gets done? How do you like work to get done personally? Because as the leader, if it doesn't work for you, it's not going to work for anyone else. And then does that allow you to be hybrid, remote, or do you need to be in office? I think that's the only way to do it. And frankly, there's enough talent in the world that, there's an office and a place to work for everybody, right? So we worry we're not going to find people if we don't go remote. I just think that, is kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. The AI one's a little bit harder. Right. I think what we're seeing right now is that AI absolutely has the potential to create productivity gains. I'm not seeing any research in my world that tells me those gains are coming fast. What I am seeing is people are starting to feel overwhelmed. We're doing a lot more work and it's lower quality. And we're starting to lose trust. I was just with a team the other week where one of the leaders, I was giving them all these sort of indications of whether or not an email has been written by a human. It's pretty easy to tell. There's a bunch of indicators. And they turned to me on a break. They're like, I think my boss writes every single email via AI. I'm like, how does that make you feel? They're like, well, I don't feel valued and I'm not sure I trust what's coming from him. Because the truth is, hey, if I wanted to talk to Claude about the question, I would have reached out to Claude. I'm reaching out to you because I need something that AI can't provide me. And I think we sort of have forgotten that in the service of efficiency.
Yes. Watch this space. A lot more is going to be developing, I think.
Absolutely.
We've really started to, I guess, touch on, but unlock the curiosity on a lot of aspects of, creating this, better culture, the borrowed brilliance, the complete package. Really, I don't think we've given a justice in terms of how much we could go into depth for this. But the good thing is you've actually written the book to help us. What would a reader, a listener, expect to find? What's the key thing that they're going to get out of the book?
I think the first thing is that just performance in this day and age, it's a team sport. It takes everybody to solve the kind of challenge we're facing into. I think secondly is that collective belief or collective confidence is the greatest contributor to long-term performance. We've sort of gotten in this place where we believe a winning streak, quarter after quarter of success builds belief. It's actually the opposite. I think third is you're going to find some really fun stories of exceptional teams that you might not have met before, from the head of the naval operations who spent 13 years of his adult life in a submarine, to two founding CEOs of a place called Back to the Roots that have gone from building these novel mushroom kits to becoming one of the second leading organic soil and seed company in the nation, to someone who runs a camp at Burning Man, which is this big festival in the United States. And all of these teams have something in common. And it's that they, through the way that they lead, understand this idea that belief is the predecessor to performance, not the other way around. And lastly is that it's super buildable. I've given tips and tricks that anybody, any size of business can put in place tomorrow, and I will guarantee you it'll get results.
Fantastic. Look, I normally ask our guests a question about, if there's one thing to leave our guests with, our listeners with, that would be really helpful. I think you've just given us multiple great tips there. I think the next step for anybody listening, so you as a business owner, is to grab a copy of Collective Confidence, which is the book. Andre, where is the best place to get your hands on a copy of the book?
All the major retailers. It's out on September 8th, and it'll be at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find it at local bookstores. So just keep an eye out, and hopefully it'll get to a place near you very shortly.
Fantastic. As always, we'll put a link to where to buy Collective Confidence in the show notes and on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website. We'll also put links to where you can actually get in touch with Andre and follow him. And because some of the stuff he is sharing on a regular basis, very, very enlightening, helpful, practical, and well worth keeping in touch with. Andre, I've had a lot of fun today. I've not just had fun, but I've sort of, there's a lot of spark here of things that I need to be doing. And I know that anybody listening to our conversation today should be feeling exactly the same way. It's been a real pleasure to have you talk to us about this. And I'm so grateful that you've joined us on the Business Behind Your Business podcast.
Hey, thanks, Paul. I was really happy to be here. It's great to meet you, and thanks for the fun conversation.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.